Hey everybody, I'm here with part 3 from Path 5 of my Abyss unit and resource overview. In the last video, I went over Thor Ragnarok, Aegon, Mr. Sinister, and Thing. For this video, I'm going to start with Red Skull. For Red Skull, I used Doom and Nick Fury. It took 20 revives and cost a total of 730 units. Red Skull's Abyssal ability: while Red Skull remains below 1 bar of power, attacks against him suffer negative 90% attack. While below 2 bars of power, attacks instead suffer negative 50% attack. While at or above 2 bars of power, attacks instead gain plus 25% attack. Although I used Doom and Nick on this path versus Red Skull, here's a bit of gameplay of Aegon versus Red Skull. Overall, when facing Red Skull, I found Doom to be a much better counter than any of the other options I had. With Doom, I found the fight to be much easier technically, although it did take longer. I found Aegon and Nick Fury were able to do a lot more damage, but you need to be able to evade Red Skull's L2, which for the most part, I'm not very good at doing. But here's some gameplay of Aegon versus Red Skull. The main objective is to get your L2 to hit Red Skull just as he's getting to 2 bars of power, so that your bleeds will do the most damage possible. If you're good at evading Red Skull's L2, this is not a bad option at all. Not good at evading Red Skull's L2, this doesn't work out too well. The next opponent I faced was Bishop. I used Doom, it didn't take any revives, I used 1 health pot, and it was a total of 64 units. Bishop's Abyssal ability: critical hits against Bishop suffer negative 100% attack. Whenever a bleed effect is inflicted on Bishop, he regenerates a lot of health over 5 seconds and gains a small trickle of power. Draining 1 or more bars of power from Bishop in a single instant causes him to suffer a lot of direct damage. The next opponent I faced was Symbiote Supreme. For Symbiote Supreme, I used Void. It cost 13 revives, I used 9 health pots, and it cost a total of 788 units. Symbiote Supreme's Abyssal ability: striking Symbiote Supreme with a critical hit grants him a mana burn charge. When he hits 20 charges, they are all removed and he gains a power flood effect, granting 1.5 bars of power over 25 seconds. While the power flood effect from above is active, the attacker takes 1,270 direct damage per second, unless Symbiote Supreme is power locked. The next opponent I faced was Masacre, or Masacre. I used Aegon, it took 27 revives, I used 34 health pots, and it cost a total of 2,060 units. So for this fight, I screwed up big time. I didn't realize prior how easy it was going to be to gain combo for this fight. And we're going to get to the Abyssal ability for Massacre in a second, but you'll see that you don't want to have a high combo with Aegon. Unfortunately, I didn't bring in another option, and at the time, I decided to go ahead rather than backing out and bringing in Corvus or another option for this fight. Massacre's Abyssal ability: if either champion lands an attack, they inflict a fracture charge on their opponent. Fracture charges reduce block proficiency by 400 and can eventually invert the block and damage reduction. Massacre is indestructible while he isn't blocking. While his opponent is blocking, Massacre fights very aggressively. While he is blocking, attacks against Massacre gain plus 100% attack. Although Path 5 is usually the last path taken for Abyss progression, this was my 4th path and the first time I fought Masacre. When I took Path 4, I also brought Corvus Glaive, and we'll have a look at some gameplay of Corvus versus Masacre. When fighting Masacre, you're going to want to build up the fracture charges on him. The more fracture on him, the more damage you do into his block. When using quarters for this fight, you want to start off hitting into him as much as you can while he's not blocking. You want to hit him as much as you can while he's blocking when you have your glaive charges active. This fight gets tricky when you're juggling the Fight Me Coward text and you're making sure that you don't get backed into your corner. The best piece of advice I can give for this fight, don't get hit by Masacre's L2. It's not pretty. And now back to our regularly scheduled resource and unit breakdown. And that's it for part 3 of Path 5 from my Abyss unit and resource overview. Thanks for watching.